So, who here knows what kick is? How's it going, everyone? So for those of you who've been paying attention to my channel for, 2-ish years now, holy crap, I've been here for a while. No wonder I go to therapy. Anyways, for those who've been here for a while, you know that the first 100 subscribers I ever got on my channel was largely due to the fact that I frequented a lot of Kick chat rooms. For those who aren't familiar with Kick, it's an anonymous messaging platform that you can use much like any other chat room. It's just mainly focused on mobile devices. Rooms can carry up to 50 people in them at a time, and most people on there generally are there because they are thirsty, lonely farks. But you can actually find some pretty interesting sub-communities if you use the search feature. Me, when I was first starting out as an atheist YouTuber, I used to frequent a lot of the atheist and debate subcultures that exist on Kick. These chat rooms have some stories to them, let me tell you. And if you're a subscriber on my channel who first found out of me through Kick, then awesome. Let me know in the comment section below. I have a lot of good and bad memories relating to that. But anywho, let's get into the fan art real quick, and then I'll continue my story. First of all, we have some Nightmare Fuel by PS Toxic, an Upskirt Rule 63 by Baphomet, and then another fan art by Krista Panda Girl. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions, and let's get right into the story for today's video. Recently, I decided to revisit some of my old stomping grounds, some of the old chat rooms that I used to be in a lot back when I had the time and the wherewithal to do so. It was the place I went for toxic arguments before I hopped on Twitter. I went into one of the rooms labeled Atheist that for some reason hadn't kicked me out yet. I guess a year and a half of inactivity isn't enough. And it was shortly after I hopped in that apparently a Muslim user decided to hop in as well. So, how about we take a look at what happened on this fateful day?
Based Talibani brethren will come from the east. Dogs. Lord Kalki will ride a white horse with a shining sword in his hand to wipe out the sinners and start the golden age of humanity. Religion is based. It may be false, but never pretend to be an atheist in public. Always appear religious and exploit others.
Now, you can see in there that my response is going based, you're all red pill wackadoos. And that's because I keep hearing this based and red pill meme on every corner of the internet that happens to have nothing but trolls. What I do find interesting here, though, is the iconography of a savior figure coming with a sword to cleanse all the infidels. Apparently, after this bloodbath happens, the golden age of humanity can finally begin.
You're all exploiters, immoral, greedy serpents. Hitler was based. Degenerates. Killing is not degenerate, it's a sign of strength.
I'm gonna ignore what's being said by the rest of the chat in here because I want to focus on the interactions with this individual in particular. First of all, this idea that Hitler was based is actually an idea I've seen from a lot of white nationalists. It's the kind of thing we get when we say, well, Hitler was bad because he was against America, but he had it right about the Jews. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different ways this particular meme can flavor itself, but in practically every flavor, it's still the unsalted French fry of intellectual rigor. It just ends up being a shitty product from a shitty company with shitty flavor. But what about this killing is not degenerate, it's a sign of strength? On a grand scale, killing is not a sign of weakness, nor is it a sign of strength. It ultimately is a manifestation of circumstance. One person may kill another because they have a temper tantrum, and in the blind rage of their childish temper tantrum, they end up hurting an individual around them to the point of killing them. This is an example of killing that was not a sign of strength. It was literally weakness that led to it. You could also kill someone accidentally, and this wouldn't be a sign of weakness or strength. Like, say, you trip and fall, and then somebody trips and falls over you, but they happen to be the one that cracks their head against the end of the table when they fall. Your actions did lead to their death, but it was not exactly intentional, and it wasn't a sign that you were strong or weak. Just, again, a manifestation of circumstance. And then, of course, there are instances where killing is a sign of strength, where you are literally overpowering someone and have the ability to hold their life in your hands. However, there is this idea from certain people I've seen in the United States that believe that the ability to take a life in any form is a sign that you have power and strength, and thus we glorify any institution that has the ability to take life, see the police force or the military. Ironically, this is also in line with Darth Bane's philosophy, which if you want to get into that, I have a video on that I'll link in the description. But, continuing on.
Killing is not degenerate, it's a sign of strength and bravery. Killing degenerates and infidels is a virtuous act. Even God rejoices when we slaughter infidels, Jews, communists, and sluts. Commies start many wars with money. Degenerates, immorals, and atheists Slaughtering infidels increases one's merits. Slaughtering infidels is like removing weed from the field of wheat.
So, you guys remember what I said about the fact that these places are incredibly toxic? I guess I'm just wading into the back annals of the internet so you guys don't have to. So what's basically being communicated here is that killing other people is okay as long as they are people who don't align with your particular philosophy. Or religion, I guess, that too. If you are not a Muslim, then it's okay to kill you. If you're a communist, then it's okay to kill you. If you happen to be taking money from the Jews, then it's okay to kill you. I'm not trying to create some kind of moral outrage, I'm just trying to raise awareness that there are people on the internet, and there are people in real life who legitimately think that you, because you think differently than them, are some flavor of subhuman, and therefore deserve death. There's no actual benefit to you existing on this planet, because you're different. But, as it turns out, there's more to it than that. There's a reason why he thinks killing atheists and people like me is virtuous. At the end of the day, here's the reason why.
You are pathetic cowards. War is good. Without wars, you atheists will cause overpopulation.
So, I did respond in there that historically atheists have lower birth rates, but let's dig into this a little deeper. You see, it's not bad that he wants to kill us, and it's certainly a good thing, because it's not just that we have different opinions than him. No, you see, he's actually being an environmentalist. He's trying to save the planet. Overpopulation's going to kill us, and without wars, we'd have overpopulation. And atheists definitely need to be purged because of our bad ideas, so it's just killing two birds with one stone, right? Now, let's ignore the fact that religious people like Muslim and Catholics historically have much higher birth rates than atheists because there's an incentive within the religion to prosper, bearing one's fruit and all that. But considering the amount of wars that have taken place over religious ideology, the religious justification that Christianity has given imperialism and colonialism, and that same expansionist religious mindset being used in various flavors of Islam, I can kind of understand where he's coming from, right? I mean, if the atheists aren't starting that many wars, then obviously they aren't going to be able to help control the population, despite the fact that they aren't birthing enough to cause the overpopulation problem. And while I am saying this in many layers of sarcasm, I hope everybody else can see the cognitive dissonance required to make this many statements back to back. Now, if you look at the end of this, though, there is one person saying that Islam is a religion of prove me wrong. I don't want to say the word outright because I really don't want to get super demonetized by YouTube, but the word begins with a P and ends with a lack of consent. It also usually ends up with a seat at Chris Hansen's table. Now, while I wouldn't go so far as to say that Islam itself is a religion that promotes these things, it is known that historically, Muhammad was said to have had a 9-year-old wife in Aisha, or rather, he had a 6-year-old wife, and he was patient enough to wait at least 3 years before bedding her. So, while I would say that the religion itself doesn't promote this idea, its most prominent prophet was this idea. So, what does our lovely Muslim apologist have to say for this?
Age is just a number.
I mean, yeah, and a jail cell's just a room. Get comfy.
Creation itself proves that it was created. This world is proof of God.
So, not only do we have apologetics, we also happen to have the look at the trees argument. Isn't that just everyone's favorite? I don't know how many times I have to say it. The appearance of design does not mean that something was designed. It simply means that it has the appearance of design. But you can do things like erode rocks with water and make them look like they've been carved out and designed on purpose, when at the end of the day, it was just the random happenstance of where the water fell during the erosion process that led to the places where the rocks actually got carved over time.
Your existence proves God. It's not you coward little commie. It's natural. We are warlike creatures. Humans need violence in order to not get depressed. Without violence, we'll become nihilist like you.
So, let's get one thing out of the way. If you happen to, violate someone without their consent, that is that R word that you're saying. That word that I'm trying not to actually say because, well, YouTube censorship is its thing, and I'm trying to make sure that my content's at least monetizable. But this idea that if humans aren't constantly killing each other, they're going to get depressed, and without violence, we'll all become nihilists. isn't it strange that someone would claim that when it is the very acts of violence around one's person that can cause them to believe that the world itself has no meaning and sink into nihilism? This is also ignoring the multiple different flavors of nihilism that exist. There are optimistic nihilists, for instance, but this isn't the video trying to delve into any of that. But if you do want to know a little bit of my opinions on nihilism, I actually have another video where I talked about Sans in Undertale and how he actually has to deal with nihilism. We talk about Nietzsche. It's fun. Let's also point out that when somebody says that all atheists will become nihilists, all it requires is there to be one atheist who is not a nihilist to prove that that particular rule doesn't hold. The correct counter to a hasty generalization claim is to simply provide one example that the hasty generalization cannot account for. This is why we call it a fallacy. The hasty generalization fallacy is here because trying to apply these broad brush strokes doesn't actually work in reality.
Muhammad is having with 4-year-old virgins in heaven right now, while you rot with your atheism. Real men are not ashamed of violence or
Alrighty. So, first of all, you're very, very proud that your prophet is currently violating children. If in your religion it is a good thing that you are violating children in any plane of existence, then maybe, just maybe, your particular flavor of religion should probably just be abolished. These are some of the most vulnerable members of our society, and when you just completely and wholly accept the, let's not get into details of what would be happening to them in this particular scenario, then I have to say that we, as a human race, have probably failed. So, actually, funny, it seems that you are the reason that people become nihilists. Because what's the actual purpose in a world when it begets creatures like you? Speaking of that, this statement that real men aren't ashamed of violence or this reminds me so much of some of the material I've read from people like Roosh V, for instance, or some of the people who have written that if we legalize the violation of people without their consent, that will somehow be incentive for the world to become a better place because people will better protect themselves. It may be a morbid, intrusive thought, but I think I'm starting to become the type of person that feels like when somebody really wants the world to be the type of place that allows these type of horrible things, at least under legal jurisdiction, then maybe we should take a page out of most police academies' rulebook where the application of any tools on another individual is concerned. You have to feel how that tool would be used against you before you're allowed to use it against anyone else. I'd also argue this is probably proper application of the veil of ignorance. Let's just go ahead and say that right now. So, if you want to argue that we should create a world where people can legally violate you, then perhaps the proper application of the veil of ignorance is that you yourself as an individual should be legally violated multiple times. After all, that's exactly what would be happening to millions of other people if you were to enact such a law. And this is the same line of logic that leads me to believe that before a politician should be allowed to write in any law that says that a poor person has to suffer with X, Y, or Z, they should probably have their paycheck cut to minimum wage for at least a year. And any donation they receive from a third party in that time should immediately disbar them from being able to be a politician ever again. If you, as an individual, are unwilling to live out the logical conclusion to whatever you try to force onto somebody else, then by what right do you actually have the ability to force someone else into an uncomfortable scenario?
only coward sissies like you feel ashamed of even existing. Stop coping, you atheist. You know intuitively that God exists, yet you are here brainwashed like serpents. Are you ashamed, Goyim?
For those who don't know, Goyim is a word that people use to say that you're being controlled or a servant of the Jews. It's an anti-Semitic insult specifically for people who aren't as anti-Semitic as you. Therefore, by the principle of conspiracies, they must be being servants of the people they despise. And this is what I get from so many of the based and red-pilled crowd. While the red pill meme may have started as a method of saying that you've accepted reality, they've instead bought hook, line, and sinker into this conspiracy about the elites controlling their lives and those elites obviously being Jews. But over and above that, we have another look at the trees argument, saying that people intuitively know God exists. Except our intuition is not exactly a good source of truth. Your intuition is your gut reaction. It's the first response you have to a situation. But that first response isn't always correct, and assuming that truth will always come from that initial gut response is how the kind of miscommunications that cause relationships of any kind to fall apart to happen. This isn't a proper pathway to truth. This is a pathway to nothing but misunderstanding. And if you're going to base everything you see in reality off only your gut reaction, off of your intuition, especially your belief in God, then it's very likely that you'll never actually be able to perceive reality for what it is. You'll never be able to properly communicate with the human beings around you. But then, as a joke, one of the other members in the chat decided to say that Muhammad swallowed cum like fresh milk, but when you've dug your heels in the ground so hard, the only response to that, I guess, is...
He swallowed it with pride. He wasn't ashamed of existence like you. You little shameful atheists aren't even brave enough.
Now, I do want to apologize that I'm basically showing somebody's method of joking that kinda ends up skirting the lines of homophobia on public, but I'm fairly certain that the point of the insult was an assumption that the recipient would be homophobic and therefore view it as an insult. Much like how I'm willing to say that Matt Powell has some very nice lips. But what I really gather from this is that being ashamed of existence is being ashamed of swallowing cum. So I guess that means I need to get to guzzlin'.
He was gay with prides. He young men and women like a wild beast. He was strong. He enjoyed it, though. Not like you, sissy. He was so manly that other men appeared feminine to him. That's why he men like you every day. You low-T soy boys are truly a bull.
Ah, see, when you're homophobic, being gay is only good if you are actively violating other people around you as a show of your manly strength, I guess. And the manliest of men will violate everyone around them. Everyone appears feminine to them. And then we get that lovely stuff about low-T soy boys. Practically every comment I've gotten from a red-pilled Nick Fuentes fundamentalist, or as I like to call them, Fuendamentalists, reads in this vein. Low energy, low T. As if you can actually tell my particular testosterone levels at any given time. Also, given that most of the people who say shit like this are really homophobic, I'd like to say that people like that are way too concerned with what comes out of my balls to really be straight.
I'm not a shameful like you. I'm a man of God. Oh no, don't kill, violence or equality, fuck that shit. You God deniers will pay a heavy price for your sins. Just wait for God's rage. I'll suck like gracefully. I'll my own daughter if God wills.
So, this is the point where we start playing Poe or not Poe. It's hard to tell when somebody's being this extreme, whether they're actually that brainwashed, or if they're just joking. But here's the thing, I have a running theory that it doesn't matter. Because if you yourself are playing Poe to this extreme, you likely will attract people who aren't playing Poe. People who think that you legitimately are acting this way because you hold the same values that they do. And thus, what you actually accomplish in trying to just get your lulz for the day by playing Poe is validating other people's abusive tendencies. To give you an example of this, there are people who legitimately believe that the Earth is flat. Many of these people cannot tell the difference between somebody playing Poe and just LARPing being a flat earther, and then somebody else being an actual flat earther. This causes a lot of flat earth communities to be a mixture of people playing Poe for fun, and then people who actually believe the Earth is flat. But as per Poe's law, there is no actual way to determine the difference between these two types of people. All you ultimately end up doing is growing and swelling that community with more and more people who do legitimately believe these things, normalizing these ideas and making them seem more valid. While you may play Poe in order to get the lulz, my position on Poes is that they are no better, and in fact worse, than people who legitimately espouse horrible ideas like this. You may disagree with me on that, and that's fine, but that's my position. That's as much of this guy's inane ramblings as I want to cover, because there wasn't much more after this before he finally got banned from the chat room. But hopefully this gave you guys an idea, quite literally, of where I began. This is where I started having my conversations about religion with people. My first debates of any styling were in chat rooms like these, filled to the brim with their toxicity and trolling. I'm not gonna lie, there is a little bit of nostalgia revisiting rooms like this. If you want to see more content like this, let me know in the comment section below. Playing games of Poe or not Poe can be pretty fun. But in any case, that's the end of the video, and I wanted to ask you guys what your opinions are. In this case, do you think Poe or not Poe? Do you think this person is a fundamentalist to the point where they've taken the red pill and cracked their tooth wide open on it, and the infection is currently spreading to their brain? Or do we have a Poe that simply enables the latter individual who I just mentioned? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you all in the next video. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. If you want to support me, then Patreon is always one of the best options for that. And as always, everyone, insert into video tagline here.